Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is All Things Alberta. I'm your host, CC Michael. What day is today? It would be March 4th, 2020, early afternoon. This will probably be a bit shorter of an episode today as I came back from 2 days of ice fishing up north. We got absolutely skunked at Sylvan Lake. They have not started biting there yet. Maybe soon. Gull Lake was a little more successful once you found, got some place where you weren't in a forest of weeds. Found some fish. Burbot were biting, so that was good. But overall, a good time with family, my two boys and my dad. It was a good time. We try to go at least once a year, and I would encourage you all to find those you love and make sure that outside of holidays, I mean, everyone expects you're going to get together for Christmas and whatnot, but I cherish the time I have with my boys while they're still at home. Being able to spend time with their grandparents for extended stays during hunting season. Yes, we are hunters and fishermen. And so, that was great. Actually hoping to go back up next week as well for another day maybe. So, this is a good time. Unfortunately, I caught my son's cold while up there. And so I am under the weather. But I promised that we were going to have a show today. And the last thing I wanted to do is renege on your promises. I know that the good book says let your yes be yes and your no be no. And so here we are. We're going to do a show today. On today's show, I think what we're going to do is concentrate solely on a Twitter poll that I decided to do last week. It was I'll give you the reason behind the Twitter poll. Maybe some of you haven't seen it, so what I'll do is I'll just, for those of you that can see it, I'll just hit live screen here. Here's the poll that I did on Twitter. It said in capital letters for Alberta residents only. What I mean by that, of course, is that if any provincial vote were to happen today, if you were eligible to vote, you could vote in this. Which of the following four options best describes your position? And then please retweet for a greater reach. And so I had four options. I think these cover the gamut of where people would land. And that was a hard separatist, a soft separatist, soft federalist, and hard federalist. So before I get into the numbers, as you, for those of you watching on YouTube, can see the screen what the results already are. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about the reasoning behind why I did the poll in the first place. Since the re-election of the Liberals, there have been certain people, influential people, would I say, I think Peter Downing would be one of them, leader of Wexit, pardon me, who has called for an immediate referendum on separation. Now, I apologize to Peter if I got that wrong. I know there's been a few people with the idea of referendums on certain things, but I'm fairly certain that Peter Downing has been calling for, and many others besides have been calling for an immediate referendum on separation. And I thought, this is insane. Why is it insane? You only hold a referendum on something like separation when the numbers are in your favor. And I truly believed that numbers were not in our favor. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to just get a Twitter poll and show that the numbers aren't there. And what I meant by that is that I believe through just straw polling myself, and maybe I'll get to that in the comment section because I commented in there myself, is that I believed hard separatists probably weren't more than 25%. Now, what I consider a hard separatist is somebody who is absolutely done with Confederation. Just done. There is no going back. Separation is the only way forward, and that's the direction we're going to go. I think there is strong numbers out there, but by strong numbers, I mean 25, maybe 30%. I thought maybe 30. Soft separatist, I thought we would might get another 20%. So between the hard separatist and soft separatist, I thought the numbers would hover around the 50% range. The soft federalist and hard federalist are what they are. Some people asked for a definition. What is a soft separatist? What is a soft federalist? A soft separatist is somebody that would today vote for separation, but with minor adjustments. Let's say that the Conservatives got back in nationally, and they were able to stop the eco-terrorist nonsense going on, and allow investment to come back to Alberta, like something as simple as agreeing to the tech mine, passing that legislation to give the green light for tech mine operations to start. Something that simple would appease most of the soft separatists to go, yeah, we'll go back to, I would say the Harper years, status quo. Yes, we're paying $20 billion a year to Ottawa, but whatever, the federal government is out of the way and we're able to work and share our prosperity with the rest of Canada. That's fine. But essentially, it's a federal government that just gets out of the way. Those are what I'd call soft separatists. Soft federalist, of course, is somebody who is warm to the idea of separation, meaning there is an acknowledgement that while they are Canadians, they would vote no, but they see the problems and they see that something has to be done about the problems, but they want to exhaust every avenue first before they would dip their toes into the separatist ranks. And then, of course, hard federalist is once a Canadian, always a Canadian, and there is no splitting of the proverbial family. And so, like I said earlier, the whole reasoning behind the post was to show guys like Peter Downing and others that are calling for an immediate referendum on separation that they are being preemptive. It's too early. We don't have the numbers to support it. So I was quite shocked when after the first 1,000 votes, I would say this was in the first 15 hours, the hard separatist numbers, I think the hard separatist numbers peaked at around 58%. When you added the hard separatist and soft separatist numbers after the first 15 hours, it was sitting at 90%. So it peaked. The separatist vote peaked at 90%, which was absolutely flooring to me. Now, somebody else made the point, and I won't belabor this point. I think one gentleman in the, I assume was a gentleman, in the comments section, made the point after I talked about. Well, there it is right there. I think let me pull it up, see if it's in there. Where I talked about, I thought the numbers would be higher. No, it's not in this one. They made the point, and it is correct. We have to give the person their due. Is that Twitter can be an echo chamber, and often is an echo chamber. Meaning, when I send out, because I'm a separatist, when I send out a poll like this, well, of course, all my separatist buddies are going to vote separation because that's what we do. Is that because we're only one. How does that work? Basically, the idea goes is that in the Twitterverse, if you're a separatist, all your followers are separatists too, because you only have one interest that people follow you for, right? Which is silly. When you look at my profile, host of all things Alberta, Edmonton Oilers are a passion of mine. Way to go, Oilers! 2 gutsy wins in the last couple of days. I'm a former pastor. I'm still a Christian. I'm a former pastor. I love all things history. I'm a historical buff. Went to University of Lethbridge originally to be a history major. Ends up that I couldn't pick out the important aspects, or what the professor felt was the important aspects of Canadian history. I remember one question actually being, who was the I think it was, who was the first editor of the Toronto Star or something like that. And I thought, you should have seen the size of the textbook. And I just thought, of all the things that I was supposed to know, that really wasn't one of the things that I really honed in on as being important. However, I digress. I switched to a science major shortly after that. All things hockey, news, politics, and finally I have Alberta Separatist. Okay, so I have a number of Christian friends. What this gentleman doesn't understand is that you know what? I'll get into it after. When I get into the comments. The comments are some of them are quite hilarious, and it was the same individual that talked about Twitter being an echo chamber that he brought up something else, which was rather humorous. But I'll show you that later. Anyway, long and the short is that after the first 1,000 votes, I went to bed, got up the next morning, and the numbers had dropped to 82%. So the Federalist vote, the hard Federalist vote, actually jumped quite a bit overnight, which I was expecting. But the idea of the echo chamber thing then is that all those people that voted hard Federalist overnight would then retweet it to their followers, who, of course, because they're Federalists, all their friends are hard Federalists, so the numbers should have rebounded huge for the hard Federalists. Fact of the matter is they didn't. So what we have for our final tally, we had 2,451 votes. I don't know what kind of reach lots of these, I don't know what a good response is. I haven't been on Twitter long enough, and I don't have enough followers to know what is a great poll. But after 3 days, we had 2,451 votes, of which 51.3%, as you can see there, 51.3% were hard separatists. Folks, that's a majority. That's a majority of people that voted hard separation, meaning they are done with Canada. They're done. On top of that, we add the soft separatists at 32.4%. So that equals, a quick math, 83.7%. 83.7% of Alberta residents, now I'll get into that in a second, of alleged Alberta residents are separatists of some kind. Now, to me, those numbers are shocking. They're absolutely flooring. Like that. I got into this to show that we don't have the numbers. And what this little Twitter poll did was show me that, folks, we might have the numbers, which is amazing. Soft Federalist was 6.2. Hard Federalist is 10%. Why did I think going in that we don't have the numbers? Because when I talk to people face to face, when I talk to those that I know personally and ask them this question, the numbers were far closer to, let's call it 50-50. And that's adding the separatist, soft and hard separatists, and hard and soft Federalists. There are lots that are warm to the idea. I actually expected the soft Federalist number to be the highest, meaning we see the problems, but let's check all boxes off first before we go down the road of separation. These numbers are showing me something very, very differently. So it's interesting. The problem with a Twitter vote is that although we can ask and beg and plead for people, Alberta residents only, I know looking through, and that can affect the vote on either way. Because I do know that overnight when the hard Federalist number spiked, I went through and looked at some of the people that voted, and there was the odd one that clearly wasn't Albertan. So there were those from outside of Alberta that voted. I do know and appreciate those from Ontario and Saskatchewan that messaged me or put it in the comment section anyway, that they would love to vote. They are hard separatists, and if they could vote, they would vote hard separatists. Please, please, please let us know what the results are. So there you go. Those are the results. Thank you for not voting, skewing the numbers. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is scientifically accurate within 1.2% of any one thing. It's not scientific, but it is a snapshot, and it's a very shocking snapshot to be totally honest. With things like this, people can vote and not worry about retweeting or having people, like, other people don't know what you voted, right? So you can vote and retweet it onto others, and so in something like this, unless you divulge what your vote was, this is something you could safely vote your conscience and forward on, and this runs the gamut, everything from hard separatist to hard federalist. So everyone falls in there somewhere, and still those are the numbers. So to me, that is quite shocking. So what I want to briefly talk about the Saskatchewan poll as well. I don't want to pull it up because that'll take me away from this and I'll have to look. Pardon me. Somebody said something in the comments about they would love to see one for Saskatchewan. There were more than one person that said that they were from Saskatchewan. They would have loved to have voted, but they couldn't. So I did run one for Saskatchewan. Now, I don't know if it's because my reach isn't that great in Saskatchewan, but after 2.5 days, we don't have nearly the numbers. I'm not even sure. I'd have to look. I'm not even sure we're at 100 votes, but the percentages are pretty similar to what you see here. Actually, the hard separatist number so far in the Saskatchewan vote is 10% higher. It's at 61%. But again, it's a small sample size. You always have to be wary about small sample sizes. So take that with a grain of salt. But Saskatchewan also appears to have a pretty large separatist contingent with it. So with that, I just wanted to talk about what it means. What it means is, I don't know what it means. What do you think it means? I think that we might be a whole heck of a lot closer to a separation vote than I thought. And this leads me to another story that I saw. I think it was yesterday. I'm not positive, but there was somebody tweeting out that only 100 showed up for a Wexit rally in Edmonton, and with the kind of derision going, yeah, Wexit, we're going to take you seriously when you can only get 100 people to a rally in Edmonton. I didn't go. I live 2.5 hours away from Edmonton. I really didn't want to go. I don't think a rally necessarily means anything. Now, some might say the same thing about a Twitter poll, and that's fine. But people are busy. I know I'm busy. Father of 2 here at home still, and I work 2 jobs. I'm busy. I don't have time to go to rallies somewhere. It's a hard enough time just putting up a podcast and talking about all things Alberta, right? So people are busy. People don't have the time. Maybe they don't have the money. But if it came down to a vote, I think you would find far more interest in those that want to look at a poorly attended rally in Edmonton and say that separation is dead. You do so at your own peril. This is not dead. It's not dead at all. So let's look at some of the comments. I thought there were some interesting comments. We'll look at one here. Somebody, Token, said, I voted soft separatist only because I'm still waiting to consider other options if they make sense. It doesn't mean I wouldn't vote for separation when the opportunity arises. And there's many in that camp, right? And I expected that number to be far higher, actually, is that between the soft separatist or the soft federalist, I expected those numbers to be far higher. And there are many that would like to see Canada fixed. And I've said, I even said it on last episode, that if the Buffalo Declaration were taken seriously, that some of the issues that are being presented in that were taken seriously and fixed, then separatism would die. But the problem is that those things are not going to be taken seriously, and so separation is not going away anytime soon. Trucker Mech Can. Dave W. says it's a tough one when you still love the country you were born in but are being pushed out by other parts of the country and many that were not even born here in this country. Now, some people are going to jump all over that and call Dave W.'s tweet racist because that's what the left does. Never mind the fact that the tweet might be true. Truth doesn't matter. Anything that might remotely smell of racism is jumped all over. So brave Dave to put that in there. But the fact of the matter is when the federal government is bringing in the number of migrants at the rate in which they are, and I truly believe that's done on purpose in order to prop up the liberal vote. This is a take that makes sense. Here's our guy that I was talking about. Vow of online comless taker at 3 cheeseburgers. So a very anonymous Twitter account. You're a separatist. This was his point. Point's well taken. You're a separatist, so your followers are separatists. You'd have to be really dumb to be surprised at your poll results. Well, that's only if you're making the assumption that all of my Twitter followers were only separatists. That's a really stupid assumption. So yeah, it is what it is. And then he did this. This is wonderful. I wonder why I made the assumption you were a separatist. Oh, well, I guess we'll never know. So he's being a smart aleck here for those that are listening via podcast. I thought he originally underlined, but maybe he circled Alberta separatist. I thought he underlined or highlighted former pastor history. I wasn't sure what his point was. And seeing this now, I still don't know what your point is. My assumption is that I'm a separatist. Obviously, when I put Alberta separatist in my Twitter handle, I'm not hiding the fact that I'm an Alberta separatist. My point is that just because I'm an Alberta separatist doesn't mean I don't have other interests and that other people that follow me don't have those same interests, right? For instance, I would argue that maybe not a majority of my fellow Christian believers are Federalists, but I would put it at close to 50%, if not over. So all of those people received my my Twitter poll, right? So anyway, that's just a silly take. So it is what it is, and you're going to get that on Twitter, right? The cesspool of social media that it can be at times. Let me see. Patriot says Canada need not worry so much about everyone else. And here's something I wanted to talk about. Marlon Mack. I live in Drayton Valley. If you polled residents here, I'm sure you would get 75 to 80%, if not higher, for separation. I don't doubt for a second that there are pockets of especially the smaller towns like Drayton Valley, which are largely based upon oil and gas. You look at any of those up that west side, Rocky Mountain House, Sundre, the good people there that are in the resource market. Yeah, are they going to have higher numbers? Absolutely. The problem isn't rural Alberta. The problem for separation is going to be found in Edmonton and Calgary. We'll call them university towns: Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge. Although I believe there would be a strong contingency of people in Lethbridge that would be separatists as well. Red Deer, Red Deer is a pretty redneck town, and I would think that Red Deer would largely be separatist as well. However, Edmonton and Calgary, which make up, I think, over half of the population of Alberta, large numbers of people in the major urban centers would likely be Federalist. So I don't doubt for a second, though, that those smaller areas would vote for separation. Polly P. Moose says, I wish the feds would. I wish the feds were competent enough to make this a painful divorce. Separation or separatism is painfully short-sighted. Is that true? I wish the feds... Listen to this. And this is the sort of tweet sometimes that just makes your head spin. I wish the feds were competent enough to make this a painful divorce. So what you're saying is the feds are incompetent. Yes, they are. Why do you think separation is on the table? It's because the federal government, time and again, have shown that they are incompetent. Especially the federal Liberals. Especially the recent federal Liberals. I don't think I've ever seen a more incompetent federal government than the one we have in power today. And that is saying something considering how brutally incompetent the last one was. So, separatism is painfully short-sighted. I'd love to know in what way. He had more characters to share, but that's where he stopped. I just said back, interesting take. I'd love to talk to somebody that holds that opinion. Like, really, what's the deal with regards to what makes it short-sighted? How many more years do we have to go through the federalist system we have before we wake up to the idea that maybe this country isn't working? Which reminds me, I'll just go down this rabbit trail now while I'm thinking about it before I forget. I have asked for a number of months, whenever I'm talking to somebody who is even a soft federalist, somebody who is interested in maintaining, not necessarily maintaining status quo, but they want to, they're the ones that jump all over separatism as being a stupid idea. And I just had a couple of questions for them. And I'll be totally honest. Nobody has been able to answer the questions. Not one. And it makes you wonder, to what degree have they thought about the issues? And my questions are pretty straightforward. Number one, please define what a country is. Define it. And then number two, after you've defined what a country is, explain to me how Canada fits that definition under its current formula. Two simple questions. And I've yet to see anybody answer that question. As soon as they start defining a country, they quickly realize that Canada isn't acting like a country. And that's a problem. And in order to fix the problem, we have to open up the Constitution. In order to open up the Constitution, we have to get provinces on board to do that. When Quebec will refuse to open the Constitution, which if I were Quebec, I don't blame them. Why would you? Then we are no longer living in a functional country. That's my point. And so I open that challenge up to anyone listening. Even those that are separatists, because you're going to have to answer this question yourself. If Alberta becomes a country, then what defines a country, and how does the current situation, whatever that looks like, what does that look like? Are we as a country following the definition of said country? Right now, the answer is no. And it's not going to either. But when we start looking at ways of Alberta being a country, we're going to have to answer those questions. And man, we're going to have to make it make sense. Our issues are not going to go away. In fact, one of the issues we're going to immediately run into is, what do we do with First Nations? That is something that I am keenly wanting to cover. All cards on the table. I believe the Indian Act is a racist document that needs to be repealed. I think that the Indian Act is something that it's Canada's, what I would consider Canada's apartheid. Are natives allowed off the reserve? Yeah. So it's not a total apartheid, but yeah. I don't think you have to look long and hard to figure out that First Nations people I still call them natives. I understand that in some circles that's not PC anymore, but you know what? I'm starting to get to the point where I'm tired of trying to keep up. So I don't mean any disrespect to First Nations people when I regard them as natives. So there are serious issues that need to be solved by serious people, and I don't think anybody wants to see the First Nations people prosper more than I do. I don't live too far away from a reserve. I have grown up around some reserves, and the poverty and the problems that I see are heartbreaking. And I want nothing more than to see our First Nations brothers and sisters to prosper in this province, and there's no reason why they can't, except for the Indian Act. It needs to go, but maybe we'll talk about that for another day. What else should I comment on? My next poll is going to be regarding now that we are a separate nation. Just going from my last Twitter poll that I just covered here. My next question is going to be, now what? There's only really 3 ideas I can come up with for answers, potential answers. Is number 1, do we remain an independent nation as our borders currently stand? Another option is join the United States. And option number 3 would be to join with like-minded former Canadian provinces, such as Saskatchewan, that may also jump ship from Confederation and join to be a nation with them. I do know that there are some that would jump on the join the U.S. bandwagon. I am not one of them. There's the independence, and then there's the join other provinces. By the way, some people, and I've seen this more than once when it comes to Saskatchewanites, I see the what about us? What about us? How come you guys never talk about Saskatchewan and Alberta jumping ship together? The problem is that each individual province has to formulate for themselves what they want to do. Alberta cannot speak on behalf of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has to do what Saskatchewan has to do. If Saskatchewan is going to leave Confederation, Saskatchewan has to hold their own referendum and come to that conclusion themselves. And at that point, then and only then can we look at other options. So I don't mean to slam BC, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or anybody else when we talk about Alberta separation. The fact of the matter is the way the law is set up, we individually as provinces have to secede on our own, and then at that point we can determine how we move forward. So I do wish those in Saskatchewan especially, they seem to have pretty strong cessation numbers in Saskatchewan. I wish you all the best. And we'll help you any way we can, but Alberta cannot interfere with what Saskatchewan needs to do, right? So that's why. I don't mean any disrespect there. So watch for that next Twitter poll. I've been in contact with the Alberta Independence Party. I want to talk to a legitimate party regarding some of the issues that have been brought up. I know Jonah, after episode 1, asked some serious questions. Those questions have not been answered yet, but I've been looking for somebody that is more than a guy sitting at a desk in his basement talking about political things. I want somebody that has more of their feet to the ground on the political side and understands those issues, have thought through those issues, and know how to answer those questions better. I have been in contact with the Alberta Independence Party. I'm hoping to have them on a show in the near future, so watch for that. And finally, I want to thank a number of listeners that have given suggestions. Number 1, they said something about a lighting issue. I don't have great light in here, so apparently this view that you're now looking at, I don't think they used the term axe murderer, but I think they implied it. So they said we need to work on the lighting. I agree, we do. Also, camera. We're working on a new camera. That's not going to help the look of this at all. In fact, you're just going to maybe get it in high definition, which is going to be even more scary. I am not the prettiest man. So, with that said, I think I'm going to wrap it up today. That's 35 minutes. We don't want to bore you to death. If you have any ideas, questions, comments, you can reach me at ccmichael3520 at gmail.com. You can reach us on Twitter at ccmichael4. Reach us on Facebook at ccmichael. That's the other thing we're going to be working on is we're trying to steer all things to the name of the show. The show is All Things Alberta. It's not about me. It's about Alberta. I'm just a guy in a chair talking to a computer screen about what I see and how I see it. That's all. So be looking for those changes. Keep those suggestions coming. I do appreciate them, even the bad ones. They're mostly bad anyway, but I'm used to bad news. Yeah, so until next time, take care.